Welcome to Investors Insights, where today's topic is which way are we headed? Guys, a lot went on in the market last week. Volatility came back strong on Friday after the manufacturing number came in, the lowest in 21 months, and that's right after Germany reported a very low number.
So
that was...
And Eurozone total was down for worst it's been in 6 years.
Yeah, so the fears of a global slowdown have hit the markets. Yeah. So, but Trey, talk about the yield curve.
Yeah,
because that's a very important topic.
So what kind of pushed the markets off on Friday, kind of into overdrive, really was not just a global slowdown, the bad manufacturing numbers, but then what happened is a lot of money flowed into our treasury, our long-term treasuries, pushed our long-term 10-year treasury yield down and inverted the yield curve. The reason that kind of put it into hyperdrive on the sell-off is because that typically leads to a recession. Every time the yield curve has inverted, there's been a recession. The trick is, Ashley pointed out this morning, you know, how long do those usually take to come out? Sometimes as long as 2 to 3 years.
Exactly.
So it does lead to recession, just not immediately. But we did see the 10-year Treasury drop down to 2.45%. So that's not necessarily indicative of a lot of confidence in future growth. So maybe the fear is that the global slowdown is coming home a little bit, and so that we saw that go into the markets over the weekend as well. We saw a large sell-off,
and we followed that because there's $30 trillion in the equity markets, but there's $40 trillion in the bond market. So we watched that carefully. But that's good news, though, that rates are coming down. Adam, talk about that and how it's impacting the housing.
Yeah, it is good. It is good news. The housing market, can really take off at this point. We saw the average rate of a 30-year fixed mortgage come down to about 4.34%. Well, that's not, it doesn't sound too much. That's a large change from November. November was around 5%, so that is a huge change. In fact, a little statistic for you, that is $150 in savings per month if you'd waited from November to this point in March. Wow. So that average rate's come down a lot. It will really help the housing market, we think. That puts more money in the pockets of the consumer. Consumer confidence goes up. That goes back into the economy, and we see the trend continue as we
And the
talked about
numbers
in the
are
past.
reflecting that from February, because Adam and I were talking about that. It was up, existing home sales up 11.8% in the month of February.
Yeah.
So it's really popped up. And that housing market was AWOL after the financial crisis. So we're getting some of this global stuff, but if we get some housing market back, that could really mute some of this.
Yeah, because we saw it struggle in December and January.
Definitely.
We need that little boost from the housing market.
some good domestic strength to kind of counter that global slowdown, really.
And so that's great news. And then, Ashley, talk about kind of the future forecast. We have all this negative news coming out overseas, and then we're starting to see our manufacturing turn out. Talk about the forecast going forward.
Absolutely. As we always say, no guarantees, because there aren't. But even with all of that, most economists and the Federal Reserve are looking for a good year this year. We had GDP growth about 3.1%. We kind of felt that because it had been so low for a while. Even 3.1% was pretty steamy. But for this year, it's still going to be 2.1%, and the forecast for 2020 is a little bit less than that, about 1.9, but it's clicking along at a solid 2%. Despite all of that. So the forecast for both this year and next year is still solid.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because as we look at a lot of research here, we analyze a lot of research. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. It's important for us to look at the forecast going forward and how we make our decisions on the investment side. So a lot going on. Please call us if you have questions. We look forward to hearing from you. Have a great week. Thanks.